The man behind the glass, Jackson Hayes, stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his downtown Chicago penthouse, watching the city lights flicker like distant stars. At 39, he had everything the world said mattered. His tech company, Hayes Digital Solutions, had revolutionized cloud security and made him a fortune. Forbes called him visionary. Business Weekly labeled him untouchable. But standing in his $12 million apartment, surrounded by designer furniture and award plaques, Jackson felt nothing but the familiar ache of emptiness. It had been 7 years since Rebecca walked down the aisle toward him, only for him to discover she had been sharing intimate secrets with his business partner Tyler for over a year. They had planned to merge his company with a competitor right after the wedding, using confidential information she had gathered during their relationship. Jackson stopped the wedding 2 days before it happened, saved his company through months of legal battles, and lost his ability to trust anyone in the process since then. His life had become a carefully controlled routine. Work consumed his days. His penthouse remained spotless, maintained by a cleaning service that came and went before he returned each evening. He never saw them, never knew their names. That was exactly how he wanted it. People were liabilities. Emotions were weaknesses. Control was survival. The voice that changed everything on a Wednesday evening in late September. Jackson left his office at 6:15 instead of his usual 8:30. A system malfunction had shut down the building early, sending everyone home. As he stepped off the private elevator into his penthouse at 6:42, he heard something he had never heard in this space before. Someone was singing. The voice was warm and soulful, carrying a melody he didn't recognize but found instantly captivating. Jackson moved quietly through the entrance, following the sound to the living room. There, with the sunset painting the room in shades of amber and rose, stood a woman he had never seen before. She wore a simple navy uniform, with comfortable shoes kicked off beside the couch. Her long brown hair was pulled back in a loose braid, and she moved with unconscious grace as she dusted the bookshelf, completely absorbed in her song. The late afternoon light surrounded her like a halo, and for a moment, Jackson simply stood frozen, unable to do anything but watch. When she turned to pick up her cleaning supplies, she saw him and let out a sharp gasp, dropping the duster. Her hand flew to her chest as her eyes went wide with genuine alarm. Oh my goodness. Mr. Hayes? I'm so sorry. I didn't expect you home this early. Her words tumbled out quickly, nervous and apologetic. I was supposed to finish by 6:30. I know you have rules about being gone before you arrive. I just had to reorganize the library like your assistant requested, and I wanted everything to be perfect. I'm so sorry. Jackson found his voice, though it came out rougher than intended. What's your name? She blinked, clearly surprised by the question. Carolina Rivera. How long have you been cleaning my apartment, Carolina? 3 years, sir. The agency assigned me when you first moved in. 3 years. This woman had been part of his life invisibly for 3 years, and he had never once wondered who she was. Never asked about her day, her family, her dreams. The realization hit him with unexpected force. The conversation. That started it all. Jackson studied her properly for the first time. She looked to be in her mid-30s, with warm brown eyes that held both wariness and kindness. Her face was naturally beautiful, free of heavy makeup, with expressive features that showed every emotion clearly. She had the kind of honest beauty that came from character rather than artifice. Why were you singing? He asked. Carolina hesitated, trying to determine if this was a trap. It helps me focus. And sometimes when a place feels very quiet, singing makes it feel less lonely. She paused. But I apologize if it was inappropriate, Mr. Hayes. It won't happen again. Less lonely, Jackson repeated softly. The words resonated in his chest like an echo of his own unspoken thoughts. I didn't mind it. You have a beautiful voice. Wow. A flush of color rose in Carolina's cheeks, and she looked down, clearly unused to such compliments. Thank you, sir. What time do you usually leave? 7 o'clock, sir. Jackson checked his watch. 6:53. You must live far if you're worried about 7 extra minutes. It's a Pilsen neighborhood. It takes about an hour and 15 minutes with the train transfers. An hour and 15 minutes on public transportation after cleaning his multi-million-dollar penthouse. The contrast created a stark image in Jackson's mind that he couldn't shake. "Let me drive you home." Carolina looked at him as if he had suggested something impossible. "I'm sorry, what? You're home? I'll drive you." "It's late, and it's my fault you stayed longer than planned." "Mr. Hayes, that's really not necessary. I always take the train. I'm perfectly capable of getting home safely." Jackson recognized the pride in her voice, the same independence he valued in himself. "I'm not questioning your capability. I'm offering a ride because it's the decent thing to do when someone has worked late because of my requests." Carolina studied him for a long moment, and Jackson had the distinct feeling she was seeing more than he intended to show. Finally, she nodded. "All right. But only because my daughter is waiting, and I don't like making her worry." "You have a daughter?" Carolina's entire face transformed when she smiled. "Yes. Her name is Mia. She's 8 years old." The drive that changed the course 20 minutes later, they were in Jackson's Tesla, gliding through Chicago's evening traffic. Carolina sat quietly in the passenger seat, her hands folded in her lap, gazing out at the passing streets. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. It felt like two people who understood solitude and didn't feel the need to fill every moment with meaningless chatter. "Your home is beautiful, Mr. Hayes," Carolina finally said, her voice soft. "But I've always wondered if anyone truly lives there, or if it's more like a museum. A place to display beautiful things that nobody actually touches." The observation was so accurate, so painfully precise, that Jackson felt as though she had seen straight through every defense he had built. "Why do you say that?" Carolina glanced at him briefly before returning her gaze to the window. "Because in 3 years, I've never seen a single sign of life. No personal photographs, no books with worn pages, no coffee cups left out, no mess. Just perfection. Imperfection, Mr. Hayes, is often just another word for loneliness." Jackson didn't know how to respond. They drove the rest of the way in silence. But now it felt heavy with unspoken truths. When they arrived at Carolina's apartment building, a modest 5-story complex with weathered brick and colorful murals painted on the side, she turned to him before getting out. "Thank you for the ride. Mr. Hayes, I hope I didn't say anything out of line." "You didn't? You're honest?" "That's rare and valuable." Carolina smiled, and it was like watching the sun break through storm clouds. "Good night, Mr. Hayes." "Good night, Carolina." The realization Jackson sat in his car, watching as Carolina disappeared into the building. He waited until he saw a light come on in a window on the 3rd floor before finally driving away. On the way back to his penthouse, "Outwards," echoed in his mind. Perfection is often just another word for loneliness. When he walked through his door at 9:27, later than he had arrived home in years, the space felt exactly as she had described it. Beautiful, flawless, and utterly empty. For the first time in 7 years, Jackson Hayes questioned whether the walls he had built to protect himself had actually become the very prison keeping him from living. And for the first time in those same 7 years, found himself looking forward to tomorrow, to 6:45 in the evening, when he might see Carolina again. That night, sleep didn't come easily. Jackson lay awake thinking about a woman who sang while she worked, who lived an hour away and raised a daughter alone, who saw through his carefully constructed facade with a few simple words. He thought about how light seemed to follow her, how her smile had made something in his chest tighten, how her voice had filled his empty penthouse with something that felt dangerously close to warmth. Jackson Hayes didn't believe in fate. He believed in data, logic, and controlled outcomes. But as he finally drifted off to sleep at 2 in the morning, his last thought was of Carolina's smile, and he couldn't help but wonder if maybe, just maybe, some things couldn't be controlled or predicted. Some things simply happened whether you were ready for them or not. The new routine Jackson Hayes was not a man of impulse. Every decision in his life had been calculated, analyzed, and projected through multiple scenarios. But for 5 days straight, he found himself leaving his office at 6:15, arriving home at 6:45, just in time to see Carolina finishing her work, Each day, he prepared 2 cups of coffee. Each day, she hesitated before accepting. And each day they talked a little longer. On Monday, they discussed her favorite books. She loved Gabriel Garcia Marquez and Isabel Allende, authors who wrote about love and magic in the same breath. Jackson admitted he only read business journals and technical manuals. Carolina laughed and called him tragically practical. On Tuesday, she told him about Mia's obsession with marine biology and her dream of becoming an oceanographer. Jackson listened, fascinated by the way Carolina's eyes lit up when talking about her daughter's ambitions. On Wednesday, Jackson asked about her husband. The light in Carolina's eyes dimmed, replaced by a deep sadness that never fully disappeared. His name was Daniel, she said quietly, her hands wrapped around her coffee mug, as if seeking warmth. He was an electrician. 4 years ago, he was working on a high-rise downtown. Someone didn't secure the scaffolding properly. Daniel fell from the 14th floor. Her voice remained steady, but Jackson saw her knuckles turn white around the mug. He died before the ambulance arrived. "I'm so sorry," Jackson said, and the words felt inadequate, too small for the magnitude of her loss. "The first 2 years were impossible," Carolina continued, staring into her coffee as if reading her history in its depths. "I had a 4-year-old daughter, hospital bills, funeral expenses, and no professional skills beyond cleaning and cooking. Daniel's family blamed me for not convincing him to find safer work. My own family pushed me to remarry quickly, as if Daniel was replaceable, as if love was something you could just swap out when it broke." Jackson understood that feeling more than she knew. After Rebecca's betrayal, everyone had told him to move on, find someone new, that time heals all wounds. As if the heart was just a machine you could reboot after a system error. The unexpected question, "What about you?" Carolina asked, turning the conversation toward him with a directness that caught him off guard. "Your assistant mentioned once that you were engaged. What happened?" Jackson should have deflected. Should have given some corporate non-insert. Should have remembered that this was an employee asking invasive questions. But when he opened his mouth, the truth came out. Her name was Rebecca. We met in graduate school. She was studying marketing. I was in computer science. She was ambitious, intelligent, beautiful. I thought I loved her. I thought she loved me." He paused, the old anger rising up like bile. "1 week before our wedding, I discovered she had been having an affair with my business partner, Tyler, for over a year. But it wasn't just physical. They were selling trade secrets to our competitors. They almost destroyed my company." "That's horrible," Carolina whispered. "I can't imagine. I lost everything in one day. My fiancé, my best friend, nearly my business, and my ability to trust another human being. I spent the next 2 years rebuilding my company, working 20-hour days. And I spent the next 5 years making sure no one ever had the power to hurt me like that again. Did it work?" Carolina asked, her eyes seeing too much. "Building walls so high that nobody could climb over them?" Jackson met her gaze. "It kept me safe, but it also kept me empty. And lately, I've been wondering if safety is really worth as much as I thought." The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that exists between two people who have just shared truths they rarely speak aloud, both processing the weight of that vulnerability, the storm that brought them closer the following Thursday. Chicago's sky opened up in a torrential downpour that turned streets into rivers and shut down half the city's transit system. Jackson reached his penthouse at 7:30, drenched, despite his umbrella, to find Carolina standing by the windows, staring at the storm with obvious distress. "The trains are down," she said without turning around. 3 major lines are flooded. There are no ride shares available, and the wait time for regular taxis is over 3 hours. I'll drive you. This time. Carolina didn't argue. The drive to Pilsen took an hour and 40 minutes instead of the usual 25. Rain hammered the windshield with such force that visibility dropped to almost nothing. Jackson drove carefully, and Carolina sat tensely beside him, checking her phone repeatedly. "Mia is with my sister-in-law Rosa," she explained. "She's good with her, but I don't like to impose. Rosa has 3 kids of her own." "Tell me about Mia," Jackson said. partly to distract her, and partly because he genuinely wanted to know. Carolina's face softened immediately. She's extraordinary. Smart, curious, kind. She wants to understand everything about how the world works. Last week, she spent 2 hours watching videos about bioluminescent fish. She asked me if we could visit the ocean someday so she could see them in real life. Carolina's voice caught slightly. I'm saving for it. Maybe when she's 12, we can take a trip to California. 4 years of saving for a single trip? Jackson spent more on a business dinner than Carolina probably earned in a month. And yet she spoke about that future trip with such hope and determination. When they finally reached her building, Carolina turned to him, water droplets still clinging to her hair despite the covered parking. Would you like to come up? Meet Mia? I know it's late, but Rosa probably gave her too much sugar, and she'll be awake anyway. Jackson's heart pounded. This was crossing a line. This was entering her world, making this real in ways that scared him. But he found himself nodding. I'd like that. Meeting Mia Caroline's apartment was 1/10 the size of Jackson's penthouse. The living room, kitchen, and dining area all occupied a single space no bigger than his master closet. The furniture was old but clean, the walls covered with photographs and Mia's artwork. There were books stacked in precarious towers, a hand-knitted blanket draped over the worn couch, and the lingering scent of something that had been baked recently. It was small. It was cramped. It was more of a home than anywhere Jackson had ever lived. Mama. A little girl burst from one of the bedrooms, dark hair flying behind her in 2 lopsided braids. She skidded to a stop when she saw Jackson, her eyes going wide. Mia, Carolina said, kneeling to her daughter's level. This is Mr. Hayes. He's a friend of Mama's. Mr. Hayes, this is my daughter, Mia. Jackson knelt as well, instinctively wanting to be at the child's height rather than towering over her. It's very nice to meet you, Mia. Your mom has told me a lot about you. Mia studied him with the seriousness of someone much older than 8. You're very tall, and your clothes look expensive. Are you rich, Mia? Carolina gasped, mortified, but Jackson laughed, a genuine sound that surprised even himself. Yes, I have money. But you know what? Money can buy a lot of things, but it can't buy the most important things. Like having a mom who loves you as much as yours loves you. Mia considered this and apparently found it acceptable. Do you want to see my marine biology project? I made a diagram of the deep ocean zones, and I used glow-in-the-dark paint for the bioluminescent creatures. I would love to see it. For the next hour, Jackson sat on Carolina's small couch while Mia showed him her school projects. Her rock collection from various Chicago parks, and her drawings of ocean creatures. Carolina made hot chocolate for everyone. They sat together in that tiny apartment while rain continued to pour outside. Jackson found himself genuinely engaged, asking Mia questions about her favorite sea creatures. Listening to her explain the difference between the twilight zone and the midnight zone of the ocean. Watching her eyes light up with passion for learning, and when his eyes met Carolina's over Mia's head, he saw something there that made his chest tighten. Tenderness, hope, and fear all mixed together. The confession, after Mia, finally went to bed at 10:45. Far past her normal bedtime, Carolina walked Jackson to the door. They stood in the small entryway, suddenly awkward now that they were alone. Thank you, Carolina said softly, for driving me home, for being kind to Mia, for seeing us as people instead of just service providers. Carolina, Jackson said, his voice rough with emotion he could no longer contain. I think about you constantly. When I'm in meetings, when I'm reviewing reports, when I'm trying to sleep, I wonder what you're doing, if you're happy, if you're thinking about me too. I know this is complicated. I know our worlds are completely different, but I can't stop feeling this way. Carolina's eyes filled with tears. I think about you too, all the time. When I'm working, when I'm with Mia, when I'm lying awake at night, I ask myself what you're doing. If you're eating properly, if you're lonely in that big penthouse. She wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. And I know I shouldn't care this much. I know this is dangerous for my heart, but I can't help it. Jackson reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently brushed a strand of hair from her face. Then let's stop fighting it. Let's see where this goes. Jackson, she whispered, hearing his first name on her lips for the first time sent electricity through his entire body. What are we doing? I don't know, he admitted. But for the first time in 7 years, I don't care about having all the answers. He leaned in slowly, giving her 1,000 chances to stop him, to remind him of all the logical reasons this was a terrible idea. But Carolina didn't stop him. Instead, she closed the small distance between them and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, like two people who had forgotten how to do this and were learning together. But then, Carolina made a small sound in the back of her throat, and something in Jackson broke completely. He pulled her closer, deepening the kiss, and she responded with equal intensity. Her fingers threading through his hair, she tasted like hot chocolate and hope. She smelled like rain and possibility. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Carolina touched her lips as if she couldn't believe what had just happened. We can't take this back. I don't want to take it back, Jackson said firmly. I want to see you. Outside of work, I want to take you to dinner, spend time with Mia, be part of your life for real. Fear flashed across Carolina's face. Jackson, we need to be careful. Your world and mine, they don't mix well. People will judge. Your family, your business partners, society, a billionaire CEO dating his cleaning lady. It would be a scandal. I don't care what people think. But you should care, Carolina insisted, stepping back. And I have to care. I have a daughter. I can't risk her stability, her future, for something that might not last. What happens when your family finds out? When your business associates start whispering? When the pressure becomes too much and you realize I'm not worth all the complications? Her words hit him like physical blows because underneath each one was a core of truth he couldn't completely deny. Give me a chance to prove that this can work, that I can be what you need. Carolina looked at him with eyes full of unshed tears. I need time. Time to think, to talk to Mia properly, to make sure I'm making the right choice, not just for me, but for her, too. She's my whole world, Jackson. If I'm going to risk my heart like this, I need to be certain. Jackson nodded, even though every part of him wanted to argue. To convince her right now, to secure this before fear made her run. How much time? I don't know. But I promise I'll be honest with you. I won't disappear or avoid you. I just need clarity. Okay, I'll wait. But Carolina, I need you to know something. What I feel for you isn't a whim or a phase. It's real, and it's not going to disappear just because you need time to process it. Carolina smiled through her tears and stood on her toes to kiss his cheek softly. Good night, Jackson. Good night, Carolina. He drove back through the rain-soaked streets to his empty penthouse. Jackson realized that for the first time in 7 years, he felt truly alive. Terrified, vulnerable, hopeful, and alive. The wait 6 days passed. 6 days where Jackson arrived home at 6:45 to find Carolina maintaining professional distance. She cleaned efficiently, spoke politely, and left promptly at 7. She didn't avoid him, true to her word, but she didn't encourage closeness either. Jackson respected her boundary. But it was killing him. On the 7th day, a Saturday, Jackson did something he hadn't done in years. He showed up at Carolina's apartment at 9 in the morning with fresh bagels, coffee, and a carefully wrapped book, a first edition of The Old Man and the Sea by Hemingway. When Carolina opened the door, surprise and pleasure warred on her face. She was wearing jeans and a simple sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked beautiful and real and nothing like the polished women from his usual social circles. Jackson, what are you doing here? I respect that you need time, he said. But that doesn't mean I can't show you who I am and what this could be. So I'm here to ask if you and Mia would spend the day with me. No pressure, no expectations. Just time together. A appeared behind her mother, eyes lighting up when she saw Jackson. Mr. Hayes, did you bring breakfast? Can we go to the aquarium? Mama said we might go someday, but it costs a lot of money for tickets. Jackson smiled at the girl's enthusiasm. What if I told you I have 3 tickets to the Shed Aquarium with a private tour guide? Would that interest you? Mia's squeal of excitement was answer enough. A day of discovery, the Shed Aquarium was magical through Mia's eyes. She pressed her face against every glass tank, asked their tour guide hundreds of questions, and narrated facts about each creature to Jackson and Carolina as if they were her students. Jackson found himself captivating by both daughter and mother. Mia's genuine wonder at the underwater world reminded him that not everything worth having could be bought or controlled. Carolina's joy at seeing her daughter so happy, the way she held Mia's hand and laughed at her excitement, showed him what real wealth looked like. They ate lunch at the aquarium cafe, and Mia chattered non-stop about the beluga whales and the sea otters. When she finally excused herself to use the restroom, Jackson and Carolina found themselves alone for the first time that day. "Thank you for this," Carolina said softly. "You have no idea what this means to her." "To us, I think I'm beginning to understand," Jackson replied. "Watching you two together, seeing real love and joy, it makes me realize how much of my life I've wasted chasing things that don't actually matter." Carolina reached across the table and took his hand. "I've made my decision, Jackson. I want to try this. With you? But I need you to understand something. I can't be your secret. I won't be hidden away because you're ashamed of who I am or worried about your reputation. I would never ask you to be a secret. And I need you to know that if this gets hard, if your world pushes back against us, I need you to be honest with me. Don't let me fall deeper only to walk away when it becomes inconvenient." Jackson squeezed her hand. "I'm not going anywhere. Whatever comes, we face it together." Mia returned then, bouncing with renewed energy, and they spent the rest of the afternoon exploring the aquarium. As the sun began to set, Jackson drove them back to Pilsen, but instead of dropping them off, he suggested dinner at a small Mexican restaurant Carolina loved. It was perfect. Simple, warm, real. Everything Jackson's life had been missing. The storm arrives, 3 weeks passed in blissful secret. Jackson and Carolina saw each other every day, sometimes at his penthouse, sometimes at her apartment, often with Mia as their enthusiastic companion. On weekends, they explored Chicago together. Jackson discovered hidden taco stands and neighborhood parks he never knew existed. Carolina saw art galleries and attended a symphony performance for the first time. They were building something real, something that felt solid and true. Jackson felt parts of himself awakening that had been dormant for years. He laughed more, worried less, and found joy in simple moments. But secrets in elite circles never stay hidden for long. On a Tuesday afternoon, Jackson's executive assistant, Brenda, knocked on his office door with an expression of barely concealed concern. "Mr. Hayes, your mother is here. She seems quite insistent on speaking with you immediately." His mother, Patricia Hayes, swept into his office like a force of nature. At 65, she maintained the kind of elegance that came from old money and strict upbringing. She wore Dior and pearls, and her expression could freeze water. "Jackson," she said without preamble, "we need to talk about this situation with the cleaning woman." Jackson's blood ran cold. "How did you find out? Did you really think you could parade around Chicago with a woman in that profession without someone noticing? The Thompson family saw you at Grant Park last weekend. The Reeds spotted you at some taco stand in Pilsen. And yesterday, Margaret Chen saw you with this woman and her child at the Museum of Science and Industry." Patricia sat down without being invited, her posture perfect. "So yes, Jackson, I found out. And I'm here to stop you from making the biggest mistake of your life." "Her name is Carolina," Jackson said, his voice dangerously quiet. "And she's not a mistake. She's a liability. Think about your company, your reputation, our family name. What will your board members say? What will our social circle think? What will happen to business relationships we've spent generations building?" "I don't care," Jackson said, standing up. "For 7 years I've built this empire. I've multiplied my wealth beyond what you and Father ever imagined. I've been on every important list, won every significant award. And for all of that time, I've been completely empty. Just existing, not living. Going through motions, not feeling anything. That's called being a responsible adult, Jackson. Feelings don't build empires. Strategic alliances do. Carolina works 3 cleaning jobs, Jackson said, his voice rising. She gets up at 5 in the morning and works until 9 at night, 6 days a week. Everything she does is so her daughter can have a chance at a better life. It may be studying marine biology someday. She doesn't have money for luxuries, but she buys used books because she believes education is the only real wealth. And when she talks about her late husband, 4 years after his death, there's still so much love in her voice that it breaks my heart. Jackson, please. She sees me, Mother. Not Jackson Hayes, the CEO, or Jackson Hayes, the millionaire. She sees the man who's been hiding behind walls for 7 years because he was too scared to be hurt again. And she had the courage to love me anyway. So I'm going to choose her. I'm going to choose Carolina and Mia. And if that means you withdraw your approval, or the Hayes family disowns me, or I lose business contacts, then so be it. Because I finally found something worth more than all the money in the world. His mother was silent for a long moment, studying her son with an expression he couldn't quite read. You really love her, more than I thought possible. Patricia stood slowly. Then you're a fool. But I suppose you inherited that from your father and me. We had our own battles with society when we married. He was new money, I was old establishment. Everyone predicted disaster. She moved toward the door, then paused. If you're going to do this, do it properly. Don't hide her away or treat her like she's less than she is. If she's worth fighting for, then fight openly. After his mother left, Jackson sat in stunned silence. It wasn't full approval, but it was acknowledgement. It was a beginning. He grabbed his phone and called Carolina. Can I see you tonight? I need to tell you something. The choice that evening, at Carolina's apartment with Mia already asleep in her room, Jackson told Carolina everything. About his mother's visit, about being seen around Chicago, about the judgment that was surely coming their way. Carolina listened quietly, her face growing paler with each word. When he finished, she was silent for a long time. So it's starting, she finally said. The pressure, the judgment. And we'll face it together, Jackson insisted. Carolina, I told my mother, I'm choosing you. I told her you're worth more than my reputation or business contacts or family approval. Tears spilled down Carolina's cheeks. What if I'm not, though? What if all this pressure destroys us? What if Mia gets hurt because other kids are cruel about her mother dating the billionaire? What if you wake up one day and realize, I'm not worth all this trouble? Jackson pulled her close, holding her tightly. Then I'll wake up and choose you again. And the next day, I'll choose you again. And every day after that, because, Carolina, you and Mia have given me something I thought I'd never have. You've given me a reason to feel again, to hope again, to believe that not everyone will betray me. She whispered against his chest. So am I terrified. But I'd rather be terrified with you than safe and alone. Carolina pulled back to look at him, searching his face for any sign of doubt. Whatever she saw there must have convinced her because she nodded slowly. Okay, we do this together. But promise me something. Anything. If it gets too hard, if the price becomes too high, you'll tell me. You won't just endure it silently until you break. We communicate, we're honest, and we protect each other and Mia above everything else. I promise. Deep and full of promise and fear and hope, all tangled together. 6 months later, the next months weren't easy. There were articles in society pages, whispered conversations at business events, awkward questions from Mia's classmates. Jackson's board expressed concern about optics. Old family friends stopped calling, but there were also unexpected allies. Jackson's father, who he rarely spoke to, called to say he respected his son's courage. Several board members privately admitted they admired him for choosing love over image. And gradually, the whispers died down as people found new scandals to discuss. Carolina continued working. Though Jackson tried repeatedly to support her financially, she refused, maintaining her independence even as their relationship deepened. Eventually, they compromised. She took business classes at night, working toward starting her own cleaning company that would provide fair wages and benefits to workers. Jackson became an investor, But Carolina remained the owner and operator. Mia thrived, initial wariness of change giving way to genuine affection for Jackson. He attended her school science fair, cheered at her soccer games, and helped her build an elaborate model of the ocean floor for her bedroom on a spring evening. As they sat together in Carolina's apartment, Jackson, having long since given up his sterile penthouse for the warmth of her small but love-filled home, Mia was doing homework at the kitchen table while Carolina and Jackson cooked dinner. Together, Carolina said, stirring pasta sauce. My grandmother used to say that the human heart is like glass. It can shatter into 1,000 pieces, but it can also be rebuilt. And when it's rebuilt, the cracks become part of its beauty. They're proof that you survived, that you were brave enough to keep feeling even after you were hurt. Jackson wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. Your grandmother was a wise woman. She would have liked you. She would have said, you have a good heart, even though you tried to hide it. I'm not hiding anymore. No, Carolina agreed, turning in his arms to kiss him softly. You're not. From the table, Mia made exaggerated gagging sounds. Gross. Can you guys stop being mushy until after I finish my homework? They both laughed, and Jackson realized something profound. This noisy, cramped, imperfect life was everything he had been missing. This was what wealth really looked like. Not in bank accounts or property or status, but in love, freely given, and second chances bravely taken. In walls torn down and hearts opened wide 7 years ago. Jackson Hayes had closed himself off from feeling anything, convinced that safety was worth any price. Now, holding Carolina close, while Mia complained about their affection and dinner simmered on the stove, he understood that the only thing worse than risking your heart was never using it at all. Some loves were worth any obstacle, any judgment, any challenge. Some loves were worth everything, and Carolina Rivera, with her strength and kindness, an unwavering belief that broken hearts could be beautiful, was worth everything and more.